uncertainty in Syria. A key rebel leader says he plans to dissolve Syria's security forces. Rebel forces have also said they plan to close prisons that were run by President Assad. Meanwhile, Turkey and Qatar have sent a joint delegation to Damascus for negotiations, that amid questions about the fate of Syrian Kurds in the northern part of the country. Now, in addition to military incursions, Syria has already been dealing with a number of economic issues, and it's a tough road forward for the new government. Syria saw its economy contract by 85% during the decade-plus long civil war. Now, according to the World Bank estimates, that means the total GDP is worth about $9 billion, and it has left a vacuum for record inflation as well as unemployment. Inflation hitting 140% back in 2023, with unemployment more than 13%. The future still remains tough as the two pillars of economy, oil and agriculture, remain simply in tatters. Now, as a result, more than half of those in the country are right now living in poverty. Let's talk more about the uncertainty and the future of the Syrian economy. And for that, we're joined by Jonathan Broder. Jonathan is a contributing editor at Congressional Quarterly and SpyTalk. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the challenges are many and immense, but let's start with the immediate economic concerns Syria is facing in the aftermath of Assad's government.
Well, it's a very, very dire situation. As you mentioned, inflation is rampant. I think the Syrian pound was roughly 50 to the dollar before the civil war began in 2011. It's now 15,000 to the dollar. And as you mentioned, the GDP was roughly about 67, 68 billion dollars a year. It's now 9. So things are pretty dire over there. And the agriculture and oil have simply been decimated. Those are the two main industries in Syria. And what the new government is saying now is that they want to open up the market, have a free market system, as opposed to the state-controlled corrupt system that they had before.
Okay, let's.
And this has been very, very positively received by business people in Syria.
So we've hit rock bottom. So let's talk about how international sanctions and the need for reconstruction aid are going to shape Syria's economic recovery.
Well, they're going to need a lifting of the sanctions and massive international aid. There's going to be a meeting tomorrow in Amman, Jordan, of the foreign ministers of the United States, the EU, Turkey, and all of the Arab Gulf states, which are very wealthy. Right. And they're going to try to put together some sort of a plan to reconstruct Syria. The problem is that the United States and the EU have not lifted their sanctions yet. And without a lifting of the sanctions or an even recognition of this new government, it's going to be very, very hard for aid groups to come in, for countries to come in and give them money, because they're still under sanction. So it's that meeting tomorrow will be decisive. Right now, what we've heard from the White House is that the White House is considering taking the Hayat Tahrir al-Shams, the HTS rebel group that is now in control of Damascus. They were declared a terrorist group by the United States, and they're still on the terrorist list. So, and there's a $10 million bounty on the head of the leader of HTS. So a lot of things have to happen before
Right.
that money can start coming in.
And picking of what you're talking about, it's in the best interest of the neighbors of Syria to have peace and stability in that nation. And it's not only the organization you talked about, but also al-Qaeda and the remnants of ISIS. They still have a foothold in that area. Now, picking up on your point, we have already seen Qatar and Turkey send representatives to Damascus as well. So let's talk a little bit more about Syria's neighbors and what they have at stake in that region.
Well, the main neighbors would be Turkey, which borders Syria on the north. Their main concern is the Kurdish militias that are on the border with them. They believe that these Kurdish Syrian Kurds are members of the PKK, which is a terrorist organization, recognized as a terrorist organization by the United States and Turkey and the EU. And they've been at war with Turkey for, I don't know, 20 years or so now. The Turks have formed a proxy militia called the Syrian Free Army, which is operating inside Turkey, right along, inside Syria, right along the Turkish border. They've taken some territory, but they are now fighting against another group of armed Kurds called the Syrian Democratic Forces, who are supported and trained and armed by the United States. And their main function is to fight against ISIS and any remnants of ISIS that are still in Syria. Right now, the Syrian Free Army, backed by Turkey, and the Syrian Democratic Forces, backed by the United States, are fighting each other. And that fighting is going on as we speak. So, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, met with the Turkish President Erdogan, right, today to try to resolve this situation. It has not been resolved yet.
Okay, so Jonathan, to make it even more confusing, there are legions of Syrians who will be returning, want to be returning, some because they want to, other refugees because they're being forced to return home by the nations they're in right now. So what are they going to find? Is there work? What role could these refugees might play in rebuilding the country?
I think that if the refugees were to return now, and some are, that is going to create a huge burden on this rebel group that is trying to form a transitional government. It's not totally formed yet. They're just getting on their feet. They're going to have to feed them. They're going to have to clothe them. There's been massive destruction as a result of 13 years of civil war. The infrastructure is decimated: electricity, water, food. As we mentioned before, the agriculture sector it has been decimated as well. Sure. If these refugees come back in great numbers,
which they are expected to do,
yes, it's going to create a huge burden on this government that's trying to form right now.
Well, for students of history, it sounds like Afghanistan in 2001 after the Taliban was driven out, but we'll just have to wait to see how all of this plays out. Jonathan Broder, certainly appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.